Hi everyone. It is April 1st, 2020. It's a Wednesday. Today I would like to talk about last night's President's Task Force press briefing where they presented several models. And today there's been a lot of reporting. I observed the questions from the press last night. I've seen some of the reporting and I've observed some of the conversation, if you will, on social media. So I'd like to give you my impression on what was presented last night, how to help understand these models and what they were trying to tell us, and hopefully put a little clarity around that. So the first person to speak was President Trump. And President Trump, every person who spoke put a lot of emphasis on motivating Americans, affirming what we're doing, preparing us for what might come. But President Trump couched the rest of the meeting by saying Dr. Birx will explain how this data formed the basis of our decision to extend for another 30 days. So that's her purpose in speaking. Dr. Fauci will explain to you why it's important to continue to follow the guidelines for the next 30 days. So when they got together and prepared this data and prepared for this meeting, those were the two goals they had in mind. Now, I watched it and Birx kind of spoke to both and Fauci spoke to both, but those are the two. They want us to understand what was behind their decision for the 30 days so that I imagine partially so we can buy into that decision, and why they want us to continue doing what we're doing and not let our guard down. Now, the first graph is titled, you can look these up, I'll put a link on my description. The goals of community mitigation. And we've all seen this, it's the same flatten the curve graph. Okay, they just took the exact same image, the exact same visual, and they put the numbers on it for the number of deaths with no intervention and the number of deaths with community mitigation. In other words, stay at home. And let's see, Birx told us that this graph came from modelers at Harvard, Columbia, Northeastern, and Imperial. That would be the Imperial College of London. She said that the first graph shows us what happens if we follow the guidelines. Okay. Now, and Dr. Fauci, he said that if left alone and did nothing, basically restating what's written on the graph, then we get the dark curve, and with mitigation, we see great improvement. And he explains the steps. He said, step one, we see the new cases of the virus leveling off. Then we see less hospitalization, less ICU, and less death. But he seemed to want to impress upon us that there would be a lag. In other words, as the infections start to decrease, the death rate may continue to increase for a little bit. He felt that was important, and that's pretty commonsensical, I think. So the issue that they're concerned with is healthcare capacity. So you have infections, and then out of those infections, a portion of those we're being told 20% comes from they'll go to the hospital. Of the people that go to the hospital, a portion of those will need intensive care. And of the people that receive intensive care, a portion of them will die. Now, the questions that came out after this seem to focus on this precise numbers, okay, and from the press, and if you listen to the question and listen to the answer, and when you listen to the answer, you could tell that Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, neither one of them are committing to these. These are not precise numbers. As soon as you start saying, okay, let's talk about 100,000, they say, well, we don't know it's going to be 100,000. And, if we talk about it, 1.5 million, well, we don't know it's going to be. Or they say, you're telling us the best we can possibly hope to accomplish is 100,000 deaths. No, we're not telling you that. So the data versus the conclusions and the questions kind of seem to be a misconnect. Now, I can tell you from business, when presenting data and charts, say from an engineering perspective to the management team or the executive committee, you present the data as evidence to show why you're making certain recommendations, as to show, okay, I'm explaining to you the status of what's going on. I'm explaining to you what we need to do going forward. And I'm showing you the data that I use to come to that conclusion. That's often what you're doing. And then the executive committee will do the same thing with the board of directors and, sometimes in the shareholder meetings as well. But what happens all the time when you present data, you present graphs, people draw their own conclusions. Oftentimes, they're not even really listening closely to what you're saying. They're looking at the data and trying to figure out what it means to them. And a lot of us are doing that too. And that's okay. You can do that. But you really have to understand that the data was prepared and presented with a specific purpose in mind. So you at least should try to understand what they're telling you and what their interpretation of the data is, before you go off and do your own thing with it. So I've talked about models in other videos. This is not precise information, okay? Best minds, best science we have in the world from these, elite institutions, the elite people in the elite institutions, mathematicians, scientists, come together, and this is their result. But guess what? It's not accurate, okay? It's not accurate to the point of saying, is it 100,000 or is it 80,000? Is it 1.5 million? You cannot do that with these models. And they know that. The people who create them know that because we're human. We input and we create the algorithms. We input all the variables that we think. We weight those variables. We think we're doing the best that we can. We are. We're doing the best that we can to predict through the software what's going to happen. But we all know that it's kind of like presenting the weather. Okay, weather forecasting uses models as well, and you see how often the weather is not right. Well, from a precise standpoint, it's not. The further out you go, the less accurate it is. Now, it's not completely a waste. It's not completely useless. It does help us. It does help us know what to expect, but you can't pin them down to the precise, accurate, especially the further out you go, and this goes out pretty far because we're low on the curve, and whether it's time or progress along a path, we're very, very early in the process. Now, I'll jump ahead and tell you, if you pay attention to what Dr. Birx was saying on one of the previous models, they're updating it every day. So you create a model and you say, this is what we think is going to happen. You observe what's really happening. And then if the model seems to separate from reality, then you make adjustments to try to bring it back. It's kind of like firing a gun. If you've ever fired a gun, it's a matter. This is a metaphor, so it's not perfect. But as a matter of geometry, if you aim at a target 100 yards away, and your tip of your gun is just skewed a small fraction of an inch, that gets amplified the further away the bullet travels. So just a tiny fraction of an inch could be 3 inches 100 yards. At 1,000 yards, it could be 3 feet. So that's why it's so impressive when people make accurate shots very, very far away. Because it's just simple geometry. Draw an angle. Okay, if you shift off a little bit and run that angle out, and how far off are you? So it's like this. These models are doing the same type of thing. If you're off, then the further you go, the more inaccurate it is. So they know, and they do. They continuously update the models, whether it's data, whether it's weighting, whether it's calculations, whatever. They try to keep updating it. So everything in these models is based on, from what I understand, this model mostly is based on infectious diseases, what we know, the typical understanding of how viruses spread and things like that. So here's the problem. We expect to control our environment. We expect that we trust in science. We trust in politics. We trust in all these things to control our world. And then at our own personal level, we want to control our world. And we can't accept if someone says, we don't really know. We don't really control this. But that's the fact. That is the absolute fact here. Okay? Science, the best, take all the best brains and all the knowledge throughout human history, all the technology, everything that we have, and it's right there in those models. And it's not accurate. It cannot give you an accurate prediction of what's going to happen in the future. That's reality. Okay? Science can only do so much. Here's another thing. Science cannot cure this disease. We don't have a vaccine. Without that, we can't prevent it from spreading. Science is completely helpless at the moment. There's absolutely nothing that science can do to protect you from this virus. Nothing. Zero. If you get sick, if you get infected by the virus, there is nothing that science can do to help your body beat that virus. There is not a cure. Okay? If you go into ICU, they're going to help you breathe. They're going to treat symptoms. They're going to do things to try to keep your body alive and strong so that your body can defeat the virus. Give it enough time. If you live long enough, most people will beat the virus. Their bodies will do it on their own. That's what we're seeing here. If you go on a ventilator, the ventilator is not curing anyone. The ventilator is keeping you breathing, keeping you from dying. That's what the intensive care, and that's what the... Now, one potential, and it's anecdotal, it's not heavily proven, and I've promoted it, is something like a chloroquine. The mechanism of a chloroquine could be, it's used prophylactically for malaria. And some hospital doctors are using it, but it's far from being a proven, guaranteed, we can fix this problem. So that's what you have, folks. Okay? If you trust in science and you're trusting in, government, and if all you do is ask the right questions and press and push and hard and demand action, you can't change any of it. Okay? This is the best that we can do. So what they're talking about is community mitigation. The only thing they can tell us is if you don't come together, the virus can't spread, and that's the best we can do. All right, so the next graph. Oh, so I'm not telling you these numbers are completely meaningless, okay? I'm telling you if you go in your brain, start working through 100,000 versus 80,000, that's meaningless. What you need to take from the model is orders of magnitude improvement. Because what I just said to you is there's very little to nothing we can do. The only choice besides voluntary stay at home and everything that we're doing, the only next step you could do is what China did. And that's mandatory lockdown, seal off cities, and put military in front of every building and not let you leave your home. Restrict how many times a day you can go to the store and things like that. Well, that's another thing we can do. We could just close the grocery stores. So if you want better than what you're seeing here, those are the things you have to do. But we have to eat. Okay, so all these, that's about the best that we can do. The only tool we have, the only thing that we do is we have medicine to keep people alive while their body fights it, and we have keeping people separate. That's the only tool. That's all that we have. So the charts are showing you orders of magnitude, okay? I mean, if you talk about the high dark curve, the 1.5 million to 2.2 million deaths, think apocalypse, okay? It's just almost the unthinkable, the unimaginable to Americans in the 20th and 21st century. The late 20th and 21st, something like this is absolutely unimaginable. None of us expected this. And then you look at the other curve and you say 100 to 240,000, absolute tragedy, human crisis, tragedy level deaths. That's our choices here, okay? Apocalypse, tragedy. That's what they're telling us. By doing what you're doing, they know the only thing that we can do, the only tool we have is to stay separate and hygiene. That's the only tool. And these charts and the models, all they're doing is trying to tell you it's worth it, folks. Okay? Because that's what we want to know. We want to know if you're asking me to pay a price, if you're asking me to make a sacrifice, I want to know what I'm getting back for that. I want to know what that price, what you're going to give me for the price I'm paying, and this is what they're giving you. Okay? And one of the problems is on an individual basis, people tend to do that value proposition on their own. They say, well, I'm young, my family's young, I'm not going to die. Chances of me dying are really slim. I'm not willing to pay that price. I'm going to the beach, I'm going to the park, I'm going to have my neighbor's kids play with my kids because we're safe. I'm not really worried about it. But that misunderstands the virus threat. If you imagine it like I don't know, a horror movie. Okay, this monster's alive, and War of the Worlds. In the end, the viruses on Earth killed the aliens on War of the Worlds. The more people that are infected, whether you're critically ill or not critically ill, it keeps it alive. It keeps it out there replicating. It has to attach itself to cells. It has to inject its genetic material so that it can replicate. And that's all. That's its only purpose of existence, is to stay alive. So we have to take hosts away. That's the only way we can expect to get it under control and make it go away. Okay, second slide. This is done by someone, and Chris Murray's name is on it. It's from the University of Washington, and Dr. Birx said that this shows a different analysis, cases up. Okay, the first chart was a top down. We understand how viruses spread, and we're analyzing. So and we look at we adjust our models based on what we saw in Italy and the other countries and things like that. And by the way, there's no saying that America can't be different. There's no saying that the United States can't be better or different than what Italy did and what China did. But the previous graph is meant to tell you it's worth the try. And when this is all said and done, if it only ends up being 10,000 instead of 100,000, excellent work, excellent work. But we're already at 4,000, so it's going to be more than 10. All right, so the next graph is a bottom up. Okay, they looked at, analyzed the what happened in the other countries from a death standpoint, the treatment standpoint, and let's see, use the other countries. The purpose of this graph is to show the hospital needs, and it gives us the best idea of a timeline. Okay, the other graph just shows, the amplitude. It doesn't give us any kind of an accurate timeline register. This one is supposed to give us an idea of a timeline. And this is the one where she said that they're updating it on a daily basis. Okay, but what this one gives us is daily numbers of deaths. So the peak, according to this graph, is on April 15th, and what they're saying in the United States, 2,214 people will die on that one day. That's a model, okay? That's what the peak will be. And then, as you can see, it goes up faster, and it declines. So the slope going up of infections is higher, and the rate of decline and coming down is slower. And, well, that's because the virus spreads really quickly, but people don't get well or die that quickly, so it takes long. So that's what Fauci meant. There's a lagging indicator, and I imagine that gray envelope is just showing, it's a margin for error or whatever. Where the tolerance of this, but so that's what we're looking at. I mean, and I think again, what's the purpose of this? This is what drove their decision. This is one of them that drove their decision to recommend we extend it for 30 days. Because if you look at, now, honestly, if you look at it, we're only halfway recovered in May. Maybe their thinking is but 30 more days. And by the way, as she said, the models will continuously be updated. So we're going to get a different picture of where we are each day we move along. So by end of April, this graph will look probably a lot different than it does now. All the graphs will. Okay. So the purpose of this is twofold, right? They want to, when they put this scary number up here, 2,214 deaths in one day. okay? And the day before that, it's pretty close. The day after that, it's pretty close. And the day after that, it goes down. So we're talking 2,000 Americans dying per day for, maybe a week. And then it's only down to 1,500 or so. That's to impress upon us how important, so why we made the decision and why it's so important for you guys to keep doing what you've been doing. Keep doing what we asked you. This is supposed to impress upon us that urgency. Now, we could sit here and go, well, if we did A or B or C, we could improve it a little bit. Well, it's not accurate enough to even talk about a little bit of improvement here and there. And, we can't control it. That's part of the problem. We don't have control over this thing. All right, so the next graph is cumulative cases per 100,000. So it's sort of a percentage by population per 100,000, showing New York, New Jersey, the top five states. And so these are cumulative. Okay, so from now, every death that has happened on March 30th, it's showing 300 and almost 350 per thousand. So this would actually then be the historical. So these are real numbers. And it's showing what Dr. Birx wanted to point out is look at California. And now California has twice the population of New York. And New York has twice the population of New Jersey. So that's why they used a per 100,000 so you could get a good relative figure of what's going on. And she wanted to point out that if you look at California and you look at Washington State, how much better their curves look. And again, this is historical, so this is real data. They attribute that to them starting this community mitigation, the separating stay-at-home stuff. I think it was a week sooner than we did. So, again, this informed their decision. Places that started sooner are seeing results already. So, this helped inform our decision. We want you to see what we see because we want you to keep doing the same thing that you're doing for another 30 days. We know it's hard. We know it's a sacrifice. We're trying to equip you with the information. This is what we're using. We want you to see it too. So, this is transparency. Welcome to transparency. All right, so the next graph is the same thing, showing all states. Okay, again, this is historical, cumulative deaths, and as you can see, you have New York and New Jersey stick out at the top, and then, as you go down, they start to, the further down you go, the more they're clustered together. And Fauci talked to this quite a bit. Okay, let's talk about what Birx said first. She said, more population, urban areas equals more cases, more spread, not just okay, so what I believe she was trying to say there is more populated. So if you took a city of 20 million, let's say a state of 20 million, which would be New York, and a state of 10 million, which would be New Jersey, and compare that to, some rural states, they're saying that you're not going to see a proportional amount of cases because of urban density. So more people crowded together, closer proximity, not just the number of people is going to give you a proportionally higher number of cases, but the virus is going to spread faster in those locations. So, and Fauci talked about this a little bit too. He talked about focusing on hotspots and how we can avoid what we're seeing in New York and in Jersey in a lot of cases in the country by doing the community mitigation. So I guess what he's trying to do is encourage us, okay, you may not be in New York or New Jersey, okay, that's good news, but that's not a reason to say I don't have to worry about it and I can just leave my house and do whatever I feel like doing. That's what they're trying to say there. They're trying to say that, not only are you not going to be like New York, you can pretty much arrest this problem very, very quickly. Those of you that don't have a lot of cases right now, you're spread out a little more, keep doing what you're doing because we can virtually wipe out. That might be the area where we can significantly chip away at that 100,000 cases. Maybe we can do a lot better than that based on the, most of the country, which is not densely populated and doesn't have the high rate of rise that New York and New Jersey are experiencing right now. Let's see. Okay, the final chart. Okay, they showed, oh, by the way, the previous two charts, Dr. Birx used the word hope. Okay, seeing this improvement in certain areas, and again, this is historical, so this is hard data. This isn't a model. This isn't, projecting. But seeing the other areas not doing what a New York and New Jersey are doing, that gives us hope. Okay, that's evidence proof that what we're doing is working, and it gives us hope. That's what she's saying. So those two graphs. She also talked about this final graph that's daily new cases in Italy, that's a hopeful graph because they've already hit their peak and they're coming down. So, and she attributes that to their community mitigation. They're separating people. They're more in a quarantine situation. We've seen people singing from the balconies and everything like that. So, hope. That's the most hope science can give us, okay? First two, we have predictive models telling us as best we know what the future is going to do. We can't pick we can't pick away at the hard numbers. We can look at the orders of magnitude though and see the big thing we're seeing is the difference between the two. And the difference between the two says this is all that we can do, and it's powerful, and we got to keep doing it. And again, this is our hope. So Pence, he pulled out his graphic again, said, yeah, we're still doing this, keep going, 30 days, 30 days. So, that's what we had, right? This is why we made our decision, trying to get buy-in, okay? We're being transparent, and we want to motivate you to keep going. We need you to keep going, okay? So that's what we have, folks. I hesitate sometimes to say some of these things, even around my own family, because I don't want to upset people, okay? But I want to reiterate, our faith is shaken right now, okay? Our faith in science and our faith in government and our faith in, our voices and our opinions and all that controlling our world, fixing the biggest problems that we have. If we scream loud enough, if we vote, if we spend our money, if we make demands and, we fund schools and we do what we can fix, we can't fix it, okay? Science has no tools. They can't cure us. They can't stop the spread. They can't do anything. They're begging us just to stay home and hope for the best. Okay? Well, I'm going to read a prayer for you. This was written by Reinhold Niebuhr. Part of this prayer has been recited probably 1 million times a day in 12-step meetings. It's called the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever and ever in the next. Amen. Now, I know in a majority or a large portion of America, we mock people of faith. We praise science over faith. Somehow, that makes sense to people that there's a conflict between science and religion. And I get it. Religious people have been a part of that too. But our faith is in science. Our faith is in our vote, our money, our leadership. And we think that as human beings, we can fix and change everything. And here's a lesson. We can't. We literally cannot. Okay? And this prayer is to say, I just want serenity. There is no serenity or worrying and just being burdened by things you can't change. Now, what are the things we can change? Let's ask for that wisdom. I mean, all we can change is what they're telling us, our own habits. We can stay home. We can avoid other people. We can limit our trips to the grocery store, maintain our social distance, hygiene. Those are the things that we can change. So, this prayer is praying to Jesus Christ. When it talks about him and he, that's God and Jesus. But, if you're not there, then you should still think about this, because who are you trusting, right? You're trusting in someone to get you through this. And I'm telling you, try to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that science and, intelligence and government were powerless. We're powerless against this microscopic virus. We can't do a damn thing about it, right? If someone in your family gets sick, it's up to their body to fight it. Nobody can intervene and fix it. All we can do is keep them alive. So, and hope and pray that their body is strong enough to fight off the virus. And even if you're not one whose body is weak or susceptible, now, there have been young people that have died, so there's no guarantee. But let's say you like to play those statistics because you're so scientifically minded. While you're carrying that disease for 14 days without symptoms, and while you're sick, whether it's a month, however long, how many people are you spreading it to? Remember 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon? We're all connected that way. So, you infect some people, they infect some people, they infect some people, and all because of you. So, and that's exactly what science and government and everybody is telling us not to do. They're saying that's the one mechanism we got to stop right now. So, I'm praying. I'm doing what I'm told. I am not stupid. I'm going to use my brain. I'm going to listen to science. I'm going to be a responsible citizen. And I'm praying to God that this virus does not get anywhere near 100,000 deaths in this country. Funny thing is, if we get through it and we have 20,000 or 30,000, let's say we just blow away the models and we do a great job. You'll be free. You'll be free to decide that they were wrong all along, that they lied to you. Some people will say God intervened. Okay, but I guess it's just funny that way, isn't it? Things we took for granted 2 weeks ago, suddenly they're the most valuable things in the world to us. Just a little bit of freedom, the freedom to go have a meal, the freedom to go play a game, go see a concert. Can't do that now. So anyway, look up the Serenity Prayer. I prefer the full version. And listen to what your government's telling you. Just because you don't like it, just because you don't like the information doesn't mean it's bad information. So, be blessed. Talk to you again.